Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really vital detour. We're moving away a bit from the checklists, the medical details, the scheduling that takes up so much headspace in
Yeah,
caregiving.
we're shifting gears quite a bit.
Our mission today, we're focusing squarely on Chapter 8 from Spotting Alzheimer's Early. We are diving right into, well, the emotional heart of the whole caregiving journey. It's the emotional crucible, really.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. You know, those earlier chapters, chapter 2 on spotting signs, chapter 5 about doctors and the healthcare maze, they're mostly external guidance, right?
Right, things you do for your loved one.
Exactly, what you
Right.
do. But this deep dive, focusing on chapter 8, managing emotions and stress as a caregiver, which lines up with step 8, emotional strength, it makes this crucial pivot.
Okay.
It finally acknowledges that the most complex variable, and honestly the one most often ignored in the whole care equation, it's the caregiver themselves, their well-being.
Yes. So our job here isn't just to, you know, summarize the tips on self-care. We're really trying to synthesize it. We want to shortcut that steep learning curve on managing emotions
How are we doing, though?
by isolating the really high-value stuff. We're aiming to pull out 5 key things from this chapter. First, the core foundation, its central argument. Second, the hook, what grabs you. Third, the promise it makes to the reader.
Okay.
Fourth, the single most important takeaway. If you remember only one thing, what is it? And finally, just an overall assessment. How well does it actually deliver? What's the emotional lifeline this chapter offers?
And it's clear this stuff lands with, like, immediate relevance. You see that straight away with the anecdote about Mark T in the foreword, an early reader.
Yeah, I remember that.
He talks about finding real, immediate relief from the emotional tools in chapter 8. And he specifically mentions just taking a moment to breathe when Dad forgets my birthday again.
Wow. That quote, it just hits hard, doesn't it? It captures that whole tangled mix.
Yeah.
You've got deep love, total commitment, but then bam, sudden sharp pain. Or maybe just deep, weary frustration.
Yeah, exactly.
You could spend ages managing meds, setting up safety measures, building these careful routines, all very sort of logical tasks.
Very practical.
But the emotional hit, that repeated disappointment, or one really difficult outburst, it can just wipe you out in a second. It overwhelms everything else you've built.
That's the reality, that sudden flood of feeling.
That's the emotional reality we're diving into today.
Hey.
Okay, so let's start unpacking that core foundation.
Yeah.
If the earlier parts were about managing the outside stuff, the checklists, what's the absolute central argument here in Chapter 8? What's the basic premise that makes this chapter so necessary?
Well, the central idea, and they lay it out pretty clearly in the Step 8 summary, is that caregiving is just. It's more than the tasks. It's not just a job description. It is fundamentally this really profound emotional journey.
So moving beyond just the doing.
Right. The authors are shifting the definition, away from defining the caregiver by their duties, towards defining them by their actual experience. They're explicitly saying, look, we see the inner struggle, the sacrifice, the really complicated grief that comes with this role.
And the argument they build on that premise.
Yeah.
It feels critical because it makes emotional health not just nice to have, but essential. It's not just about feeling better. It sounds like it's about preventing total collapse.
Precisely. That's the core argument. Unaddressed negative emotions, and the source is specific, mentioning guilt, sadness, frustration, resentment, they inevitably lead to burnout. It's almost a given.
Okay.
And this burnout, it's not just a personal problem for the caregiver, it's actually a direct threat to the whole care situation. Unchecked stress harms the caregiver's own health, obviously, but crucially, it erodes the quality of care. Patience wears thin compassion phrase.
Right, it impacts the person receiving care, too.
Directly. It creates this awful cycle where the person trying their absolute hardest ends up breaking down, which helps no one.
So if the ultimate aim is sustainable, patient, compassionate care, then burnout is basically guaranteed failure on that front.
Okay.
Which means this chapter is a huge goal shift for the whole book, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We're moving from focusing on the loved one's symptoms, cognitive changes, physical needs, all that stuff, from earlier chapters to looking inward.
Really?
Intensely inward.
Yes. The new focus, and they state it clearly on pages 67 and 124, is about protecting caregiver well-being and nurturing emotional resilience.
Resilience, that's the key word.
It is. The authors are essentially saying, okay, we taught you how to spot the signs, how to handle the logistics. Now let us teach you how to actually survive the emotional storm. It frames emotional health as an active, necessary step 8, not just something you deal with if you get a spare moment.
So the priority has shifted permanently.
Yeah, it feels like a fundamental shift in the book's structure and message.
Okay, so to make this internal shift feel real, to really grab the reader and make them pay attention, they need a strong hook, something that validates the pain. What do they use? What's the compelling element here?
Well, the hook hits you right away with a statistic. It's pretty stark. 65% of caregivers report heightened stress or guilt.
65%.
Yeah, it's a huge number, and its power is in that immediate validation. If you, the listener, are feeling completely swamped, stressed out, guilty,
Yeah.
that number instantly tells you, okay, it's not just me, I'm not uniquely weak. You realize you're in the vast majority dealing with this enormous weight.
65%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely says this struggle, this exhaustion, this guilt. It's the norm, not the exception. It grounds the whole thing in reality. But, statistics can be a bit abstract.
They can. Numbers alone don't always connect.
Right. They need a human story to make them, well, breathe.
And that's exactly where Carla's story comes in. Carla is basically the human face of that 65%.
Okay, tell us about Carla.
The authors describe her just pushing through chronic exhaustion, right? Ignoring all those rising feelings, resentment, frustration, the works, just bottling it up. Until, inevitably, she hit a crisis point. She snapped at him in frustration.
Oh, that moment. Every caregiver's fear, I think.
Yeah.
That moment you lose it.
It is the moment you feel that deep regret, that wave of guilt washing over you because your patience just broke.
That's often the lowest point, isn't it? When the very thing you pride yourself on, your patience, your care, just shatters for a moment.
Absolutely. It feels like a fundamental failure. But the really smart thing about using Carla's story here, that crisis moment isn't the end. It's actually the catalyst. It's what forces her to change.
Ah, okay. So snapping becomes the wake-up call.
Exactly. Her snapping made her realize, okay, I can't keep doing this. The cost of ignoring my own emotional state is just too high now. And that crisis pushed her to finally seek out the tools the chapter talks about: journaling, yoga, finding support groups.
So the anecdote isn't just illustrating the problem. It's showing the necessity of the solutions. It's saying, use these tools before you reach Carla's breaking point.
Precisely. It demonstrates the critical, immediate need for what this chapter offers. It's preventative.
Okay, let's pivot then to our initial critique and evaluation. We've got the validation of the struggle, the crisis anecdote pushing for action. Does Chapter 8 actually succeed? Does it deliver on offering practical, usable help right from the get-go?
My take is yes, absolutely. The style really throughout the whole resource, even when it's tackling these really heavy personal feelings like grief or frustration, it stays incredibly functional.
Right.
Success-oriented.
It doesn't just wallow in the sadness.
No, it resists that. It doesn't get bogged down in the philosophy of suffering. Instead, it immediately pivots. It gives you actionable, practical methods, things you can actually do.
Okay.
Its real strength, I think, is turning that sort of vague, overwhelming emotional pain, whether it's worry, sadness, anger, into something you can manage through structured action for your emotional health.
Structured action. That sounds familiar from earlier chapters.
It is. It mirrors the same step-by-step approach they used for practical things, like documenting symptoms back in Step 3. That consistency is key. It treats emotional well-being like another task, something you can observe, document, and actually work on improving.
That consistency.
Yeah.
That's psychologically quite clever, isn't it? It's like saying your emotional health is a symptom to be tracked and managed, just like tracking cognitive decline.
Exactly. It subtly removes the moral judgment from the feeling itself. Feeling frustrated isn't a failure, it's just data.
Okay, so that structured approach leads us right into the promise of the chapter. The hook draws us in with the pain, that 65% Carla's crisis. What's the reward? What do the authors promise you'll get if you engage with Step 8? What's the payoff for doing this tough internal work?
Well, the main promise is pretty transformative, actually. The chapter promises to help you turn that feeling of emotional overwhelm into a manageable part of your resilience.
Manageable part of resilience. Okay.
So it's a promise to kind of tame the chaos, to integrate the pain, because let's face it, the pain is often unavoidable. Integrate it into a functional, sustainable life. It's not just about feeling happier all the time. It's about achieving real emotional strength, like structural integrity for the long haul.
And what did they offer right there in the chapter to start making good on that promise? What's the immediate delivery?
They give you a clear path. Specific steps. The immediate promise is providing these actionable strategies designed to move you, the reader, from maybe avoidance or denial or just kind of passively suffering.
Which is easy to fall into.
Very easy. To move you from that into active emotional strength. That's the title of step 8, right?
Yeah.
And this whole structured path rests on that foundational idea we mentioned. Self-care is a necessity, not a luxury.
Right, that permission slip.
Exactly. It's giving you permission, but backing it up with logic. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, it's essential for the mission.
So Chapter 8 gives immediate tools, but it also feels like it's setting the stage for more, doesn't it? Like it's an entry point for deeper work later on.
Absolutely. It definitely sets that expectation. By validating how necessary these deeper emotional strategies are, it creates the need for more resources down the line. Specifically, it points towards Volume 3, Preventing Caregiver Burnout.
So there's a whole volume dedicated to this.
Yes, and Volume 3 promises to go even deeper into advanced self-care techniques. And, really crucially, it tackles the process of setting boundaries, which is vital for truly sustainable long-term care.
Boundaries are huge.
Yeah.
And often so hard.
Incredibly hard. So Chapter 8 essentially confirms, yes, your struggle is real, it's significant, and it warrants even more focused attention. It's like saying, the work starts here, but we know this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we've got more support coming.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's get into the real meat of this deep dive, the practical toolkit itself. The authors seem really good at taking these big psychological ideas and breaking them down into small, repeatable actions. Let's drill into those 3 key strategies from Step 8 for handling that daily emotional friction.
Right, the toolkit. It's structured very logically. It moves you from just basic awareness to immediate action when things get tough, and then finally to building long-term strength. Step 1 is all about awareness. Recognizing and naming emotions through daily reflection.
Okay, so formalizing that self-check-in, which, let's be honest, is probably the first thing to go out the window when you're stressed and overwhelmed.
It absolutely is. And the recommendation is super practical. Just set aside 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's it. To just ask yourself, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? And maybe why?
5 to 10 minutes. Sounds simple, but still potentially hard to find.
It can be. But what makes this more than just generic advice is how they connect this new emotional task back to the system they already built, back in Chapter 3.
Wait, you mean connecting it to the symptom journal, the one for tracking the loved one's issues?
Exactly. That's the brilliant part. They explicitly say, use that same symptom journal, that structured log where you're noting down memory lapses or appetite changes, use it to track your own emotions.
Seriously. So you'd write down date, emotion, trigger.
Precisely. Date, emotion, maybe frustration, sadness, anger, and trigger. Ask same question 10 times, refused meal, felt unappreciated.
Wow. That's a profound psychological move. You're logging your own rage right next to their disorientation frequency.
It is profound because it instantly creates distance, objectivity. By treating your anger or sadness as just another data point linked to a specific trigger, you strip away the self-blame, the guilt.
Yeah, I can see that.
The feeling stops being a sign that you're a bad caregiver, and it becomes documented evidence of a problem that needs a structured solution. The goal, as they say, is addressing the root cause of your stress, just like you'd investigate the root cause of their confusion.
That makes so much sense. It gives you a handle, a sense of control over feelings that can feel so chaotic and huge otherwise. Okay, practical question. For someone really in the thick of it, constant care, chaos, where do they find even those 5 to 10 quiet minutes?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The implementation challenge. The source doesn't detail the logistics for every possible chaotic home, but the whole ethos of the book suggests you schedule it, like a non-negotiable appointment.
Treat it like giving medication.
Exactly. You find those minutes by embedding them somewhere predictable, maybe right after your loved one falls asleep, or the second respite care arrives. The point is, it needs the same priority as any critical care task, because this structured observation, it's the key to preventing bigger problems down the line.
Okay. Awareness first, driven by documentation. Got it. What's step 2 in the toolkit? The one for like immediate first aid when a trigger hits and you feel yourself starting to boil over.
Right, that's step 2. Stress reduction techniques. These are the tools for immediate emotional firefighting. For that moment, like Mark T experienced, when dad forgets the birthday and you feel that surge, these are specific, repeatable, physical things you can do to short-circuit the stress response right then and there.
And the main one they highlight.
The most prominent one, the one they detail most precisely, is that deep breathing exercise. Inhale for 4 counts, hold the breath for 4 counts, and then exhale slowly, really slowly for 6 counts.
That 4-4-6 pattern. There's something specific about that longer exhale, isn't there? That's the physiological trick.
That's the science bit.
Right.
It's all about self-regulation. That longer exhale, the deliberate count to 6, is designed to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Ah, the vagus nerve, okay.
Yeah, it's like the body's communication superhighway connecting the brain to major organs. When you stimulate it with that slow exhale, it sends a signal back up to the brain saying essentially, okay, threat's over, stand down.
So it overrides the panic button.
Instantly. It starts shifting you out of that fight or flight mode, the sympathetic nervous system, and into the rest and digest state, the parasympathetic system. It's a direct physiological override for a psychological spiral. It works.
That's fantastic. And it's something you can do anywhere, anytime, without anyone even knowing. But when should you use it? Do you wait until you're already yelling?
No, the emphasis is definitely on using it preemptively. As a reset, the idea is to whip it out during those high-friction, maybe lower-stakes moments that happen all day long, like after you've been asked the same question for the 5th time in 10 minutes.
All right. Or when you feel that internal heat rising after an outburst.
Exactly. Or even just before going into a situation you know is likely to be stressful. You don't wait for the snap. You use the 4-4-6 the moment you feel yourself tensing up, clenching your jaw, whatever your personal tell is.
They list other immediate physical techniques too, right?
Yeah.
Ways to break the pattern.
Yes. They emphasize leveraging physical action. For better sleep, which is so critical and often elusive for caregivers, they suggest progressive muscle relaxation before bed, tensing and releasing muscle groups.
Okay.
And during the day, if you feel that frustration mounting, the advice is immediate physical intervention. Get up, do a quick 15-minute walk if possible, even just around the house or garden, or do some focused stretching.
Get out of your head and into your body.
That's exactly it. Interrupt the mental loop of frustration by engaging the body. It forces a shift in attention and energy, even if just for a few minutes.
Okay, so we have structured awareness, then immediate physical action for emergencies. What about the long game? How does Chapter 8 advise building that long-term strength, fireproofing the house against burnout, so to speak?
Right. That brings us to step 3, building resilience. This is where that core philosophy, self-care as a necessity, not a luxury, really gets put into practice. Resilience in this context means structural, long-term change. It's not just about coping moment to moment.
Okay, but let's be real. For a caregiver who's already running on empty, minimal sleep, constant crises, doesn't telling them to aim for 7-8 hours of rest like the source suggests just sound impossible. Maybe even a bit demoralizing, like, yeah, right.
That is a completely fair and necessary question, and I think the answer lies in how the chapter frames progress. Yes, 7-8 hours is the ideal, the target, but the source implicitly acknowledges the reality is messy. Resilience isn't built overnight. It's built through consistent effort towards the goal, not necessarily instant perfection.
So it's about the trying, not just the achieving.
It's about setting small, practical, attainable objectives. Things you can achieve. Why? To regain something incredibly important psychologically, a sense of control. When so much feels out of control, finding small pockets of agency is vital.
Okay, what kind of small objective actually helps rebuild control when your loved one's situation might be constantly declining? That seems like a tough balance.
The examples they give are really geared towards cognitive reframing. Things like setting a tiny goal, maybe reading just 10 pages of a book totally unrelated to caregiving each week.
Something just for you.
Exactly. Or maybe finishing one small personal project, however minor. Knitting a few rows, sketching for 15 minutes, organizing one drawer. These small tasks are designed to do one thing. Remind you, the caregiver, that you still exist. You have agency. You have an identity outside of this all-consuming role, that tiny spark of personal control. That's foundational for long-term emotional sustainability.
And the gratitude practice they mentioned, that fits into this long-term resilience piece too. Right?
Absolutely. It slots right in. The recommendation is simple. List 3 things, just 3 that you're thankful for each day.
Even on the really bad days.
Especially on the bad days. It's not about pretending the difficulties aren't there. It's not toxic positivity. It's a cognitive exercise. It's about deliberately redirecting your attention, even briefly.
Okay.
It ensures that the challenges, which are relentless, don't completely overshadow any small positive moments or victories that might still exist, however small. A moment of connection, a task completed smoothly, sunshine through the window. It just helps rebalance your perspective. And that rebalancing is resilience.
So this whole toolkit, awareness, action, resilience, it's not just about making you feel better in the moment. It's about building these internal systems, these self-awareness and self-intervention mechanisms that actually make you a more structured, more patient, and ultimately a more effective caregiver over time.
That's the goal. Sustainable, effective, compassionate care, which starts with caring for the caregiver.
Okay, we've laid out the foundation. We've felt that hook of necessity with Carla's story. We've walked through the practical steps in the toolkit. Now let's bring it all together. Let's synthesize. Why does this chapter, chapter 8, matter so profoundly in the grand scheme of this whole resource, which, let's remember, covers everything from doctor's appointments to daily routines?
Well, the synthesis, I think, is that this chapter firmly establishes emotional health as the fundamental infrastructure. It's the bedrock upon which all the other caregiving steps have to rest. If you think back to Chapter 4 on empathetic communication, or Chapter 6 detailing how to implement those crucial routines, unmanaged stress, it's like kryptonite to both of those. Unmanaged emotional stress directly tanks your patience. Compromised patience. That immediately harms empathetic communication. You can't connect empathetically when you're simmering with resentment or exhaustion. And poor communication. That completely derails the consistency you need for stable routines. It all connects.
So basically, an exhausted, emotionally fragile caregiver becomes a less patient communicator, a less effective planner, maybe even less safe or predictable. The failure of Step 8, managing emotions, actively undermines the success of Step 4, Step 6, even Step 7, about building support.
Exactly. And the actual structure of the playbook reinforces this priority perfectly. Notice where Step 8 sits. Managing emotions comes after Step 7, which is shared load, building your support system.
Ah, that placement is deliberate, isn't it?
Highly deliberate, I think. It underscores a really critical point. Even when you have external help-paid aides, family pitching in, therapists, the inner work, the emotional regulation piece, that is still the most critical component for the caregiver themselves. External support buys you time, maybe respite, but emotional strength, that's what buys you the long-term sustainability needed to actually run this marathon.
Okay, so if our listener could only take away one single thing from this entire chapter, the ultimate key message, the core antidote to burnout, what would you say that is?
Boiling it all down, the definitive message, synthesized from the chapter's logic and really proven by stories like Carla's, is this. Caring for your own emotional health is an act of strength, not weakness. And it is the singular, most essential component for sustainable, effective caregiving, period.
That reframes everything, doesn't it? It completely flips the script. Self-care isn't selfish or indulgent. It's actually a core professional requirement of the job of caregiving. It's arguably the highest form of responsibility you have, both to yourself and to your loved one.
And you see the proof right there in Carla's transformation. Remember, by addressing her own emotional needs first, by taking time for journaling, finding support, she went from snapping at her loved one, that awful low point, to becoming a calmer caregiver.
So self-care wasn't just for her.
Not at all. It directly benefited her loved one, who then received care delivered with renewed patience and compassion. It's the ultimate win-win, and it's rooted entirely in that proactive self-preservation.
This logic directly tackles that huge mental roadblock, doesn't it? The one this chapter clearly wants to dismantle, that pervasive caregiver guilt, that deep feeling that taking 15 minutes for yourself or even just admitting you're frustrated or sad feels inherently selfish.
Yes. And the chapter gives you the perfect counterargument. It reframes taking care of yourself by stating clearly that resilience ensures you can continue caregiving with patience and compassion. The authors are basically giving you official permission, and they're backing it up with the practical necessity of the care cask itself.
It's the oxygen mask analogy.
It always comes back to that because it's fundamentally true. If you don't secure your own emotional and physical oxygen mask first, your eventual collapse will negatively impact the very person you're trying so hard to help. Taking that time isn't selfish, it's essential preventative maintenance for both of you.
It even changes how you might view using that symptom journal for yourself. Writing down extreme frustration stops feeling like a personal complaint and becomes, well, a necessary data point for managing the overall long-term care situation.
Exactly, that intellectual distance it creates. That's incredibly powerful for cutting through the guilt. It's just data. Analyze it, find the trigger, implement a solution. #TechTouch outro.
Wow. This deep dive into Chapter 8 really has been essential, hasn't it? It's completely shifted the focus from just observing symptoms in the person you care for to proactively managing the intense emotional landscape within yourself, the caregiver.
Yeah, it's a critical perspective shift.
The core mission here is clear. Turn those overwhelming feelings, that emotional struggle, into structured, manageable action. And that whole process can start with the simplest, most immediate tool they offer, that 4-4-6 breathing technique.
Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 6.
Use it. Try it today, even right now.
And remember, you have absolute permission from this resource, from the logic of caregiving itself, to prioritize doing things like that. This journey is a marathon, not a sprint. And the source material is clear. Consistent effort pays off with lasting relief. That's a direct quote.
Consistent effort, small steps.
Exactly. So if you're listening and feeling that weight today, the stress, the guilt, the frustration, maybe your most productive next move isn't tackling another chore on the list. Maybe it's not researching another symptom online.
What is it then?
Maybe it's identifying just one specific emotional outlet from this chapter, whether it's practicing that breathing technique, writing down one feeling and its trigger, or sharing one difficulty with someone you trust. Pick one thing and actually schedule it. Make it your non-negotiable self-care action item for the next 24 hours.
Treat it like an appointment. Okay. And as you start building this emotional toolkit, remember the authors point to those structured resources throughout the material. If you need a formal way to do that daily reflection,
make use of those related tools. The symptom tracking journal or the caregiver symptom tracking journal, they really help you track your own emotional state with that same kind of clinical objectivity you use for tracking practical care tasks.
turning feelings into data points.
Precisely. And if this chapter really hit home for you, if you recognize that building your emotional strength is your next big challenge, know that the authors have dedicated an entire future volume to building on this foundation. Volume 3, Preventing Caregiver Burnout.
So there's more help coming.
Definitely. That volume promises to get into the really advanced strategies, things like setting firm boundaries, managing complex family dynamics around care, the stuff you absolutely need to make this sustainable for the long haul.
Ultimately, the goal, and they state this right in the dedication of the book, is for you, the caregiver, to find solace and purpose within these pages. And finding that solace, finding that purpose sustainably, it really does start with prioritizing your own emotional strength, starting today. Be kind to yourself out there.
Yeah. Be strong. Be persistent with the self-care, even when it feels impossible, and keep looking for those moments of clarity and control. They are there.
You've been listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next exploration into the source material.